Steve Biko says, I'm sorry, but I had to Ngumkhaya Steve Biko. Only the first step, therefore, is to make the black man come to himself, to pump back life into his empty shell, to infuse him with pride and dignity, to remind him of his complicity in the crime of allowing himself to be misused and therefore letting evil reign supreme in the country of his birth. This is what we mean by an inward-looking process. This is the definition of black consciousness. And I want to use this and actually come back to the conversation that I've actually had earlier today. The reason why we are people who are actually in a crime-ridden society, it's because there's a system that took away our men from our homes and actually left them in mines, took them to mines, and broke families up such that the children were not guided in a way that they should be guided. That was cruelty. And that is the kind of cruelty that we still experience today. Because when we look at the government today, when we look at the people who are leading us, you can even guess that some of the people might not really know what the conditions of our people is, more than what it means to be in a political formation. I want to take this point, but I need the break so that I can actually yell my mouth. Give me a minute. Okay, let's use this as a different scene. Leadership again. In 1912, there was an establishment of the ANC. In 1994, we feel that oppression came to an end. When you ask our parents, most of our parents, maybe not everyone's parents, what was the struggle? What they normally tell us is that white people beat us to death, white people killed, shot at us, we were segregated, land was taken, and all of that. But if you ask them again, what does it mean to struggle? What was the actual struggle that we needed to be fighting? You then have to go back from 1912 and backwards. 60-year period, and you start to study the people that actually led. I know that I might sort of take a background check before I get to my point, but please stay with me. In 1912, there was only an establishment of what was known as the People's Parliament, the ANC, the South African Natives National Congress. But before then, there were wars of dispossessions. I think 10 of them, 9 of which took place here in the Eastern Cape over a 100-year period. These years of dispossession were, in Xhosa, they are calling them imfazwe zophuco. These wars were the actual wars that dispossessed the majority of the people of their land. In 1912, the formation of the South African Native National Congress, or SANC, it was as a result of an establishment of a Republic of South Africa, I think in 1909. The actual complaint was that white people and the tricameral parliaments were ostracizing the African population, and then now they were forming themselves, organizing themselves in order to create an African parliament, and that eventually became the ANC that we know. So if we understand this history a little bit more, and when we ask, therefore, what we expect of our leaders, the concept changes. Our only preoccupation is not to protect and actually and sustain an organization. It is to actually study a context. It is actually to carry the struggle. What was the struggle? Yes, dispossession of land. Yes, the policies that can favor a lot of, the majority of the people. But I suspect that the biggest aspiration was so that we can wake up and actually commit ourselves to a life of our desires. Secondly, I think the struggle was so that each and every one of us, as men, as women, in all the different kind of races, that we would be able to find ourselves operating in a country that respects you as a human being. Then the vehicle that was used to fight the political struggle is not the actual purpose that we have to have leaders. Because what has happened over time is that we have allowed ourselves not to create our own leaders in society and wait for political formation to give us leaders. As a result, when we came to power in 1994, our attitudes were that we already have Abo Mandela, Abo Sisulu, Abo O.R. Tambo, Abo all those people, Winnie Mandela, and the woman Epinet Mbeki to actually lead us. But we didn't have any hand in developing these kind of leaders as a people, as leaders in society. So we became spoiled. If I ask each and every one of us today, where do our leaders come from? Who prepares, who has the mandate to prepare our leaders in South Africa? Is it parents? Beautifully said. But we have abdicated that responsibility for many, because that's what I was convinced. I had a conversation with Professor Ndebele earlier on, and that's the question that's the answer he gave me, because I didn't know, because I had felt that we had abdicated, we have given over the responsibility to create our leaders to the African National Congress, of late probably to the EFF, and probably to the TA, but the biggest part of leadership development, and therefore the burden of leadership, is actually in the household. We therefore need any sense of stability in a household. It's a household that should be tasked to develop a principled young person, one who has ethics and moral convictions. And it is not even the church. It is not the religion, especially practiced outside of our four walls. It's actually a household that is given to the life of this one young person that develops. And they constantly check how the child responds when there's an issue of safety. Do they retaliate? How they respond when there's an issue of lack? Do they steal? How they respond when they cannot pass or win in actually writing an exam? Do they creep notes? I was when I was in the SRC, there's one guy who was caught cribbing. And as the invigilator was approaching, seeing about where Koapa, he's cribbing, the guy took these notes and it was fakamlonyen. And then he swallowed them. Now the invigilator is saying, you are cribbing, you are actually cheating and all of those things. Can I get your notes? The guy had swallowed them. And it would have been disastrous to go and see where they end. And now we are in a disciplinary committee, and I'm representing students, and I'm told that this guy has actually swallowed his cribbing notes, and the invigilator is pointing fingers. The guy says, no, that was a chewing gum. So somewhere, somehow in our development, the burden of leadership, and I need us to take it away from the politicians, from government. I'm trying to argue with us, and I know that when we talk about leadership, there are people who actually get defensive because they feel that they are the only leaders in society. Nothing in their whole being shows that they are leaders. They don't arbitrate successfully our issues. They don't actually go and actually champion our aspirations in society. In fact, they champion their individual aspiration to an extent that they are now ending up in jail. And now we need to come and actually show our true comradeship. The burden of this leadership that I'm talking about is seated where in your own household you should be able ukuhlohla, to drill and to inspire and to educate, to train our own children. Did that basically bring a different take to the issue of the burden? Because I know a lot of people would have thought that I want to actually fight the church and I want to actually fight political parties. I want to fight them. But this is not the point at which we start fighting, because homes are producing children that no one can control. Teachers are having to educate unruly kids. But it's also because the fight has been lost, because our leaders did not understand their role as leaders, as a superordinate that need to carry the aspiration of the majority, but also because the families are not in their position in order to drive this kind of leadership development, because there is no school that will come and actually give you a good leader.